The bomb squad had declared it impossible. The manual said it couldn't be done. But when FBI Director Kane saw explosive ordnance specialist Riley Chen staring at that timer, 0030 and counting, he threw her the one thing that might change everything, his grandfather's World War II demolition kit. The red digital numbers seemed to pulse with malevolent life as they counted down toward zero. Each second that ticked away represented thousands of lives hanging in the balance above ground in downtown Chicago's financial district. Riley Chen pressed herself against the cold concrete wall of the abandoned subway tunnel, her standard-issue bomb disposal tools scattered uselessly around her feet. Everything had gone wrong. The device before her was unlike anything in the FBI's databases. A hybrid design that combined modern digital timing systems with old-school mechanical triggers, the kind of sophisticated trap that could only have been built by someone with decades of experience in both demolitions and psychological warfare. "Chen, status report!" FBI Director Marcus Kane's voice crackled through her radio, urgent but controlled. "Sir, the primary cutting tools won't work on this metal alloy," Riley replied, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool underground air. "The timer's hardwired to 3 separate trigger mechanisms. If I cut the wrong wire or if the timer reaches 0, the whole financial district goes up." 26 seconds. Above them, 50,000 people went about their Tuesday morning routines, completely unaware that their lives depended on a 28-year-old bomb technician who'd been on the job for exactly 4 months. But to understand why Director Kane was about to make the most controversial decision of his 30-year career, you need to know how Riley Chen had earned her reputation as the most promising explosive specialist the FBI had ever recruited. Riley Chen grew up in San Francisco's Chinatown, where her grandmother ran a small electronics repair shop that fixed everything from vintage radios to modern smartphones. By age 12, Riley could disassemble and rebuild any electronic device that came through the door. Her fingers moved with surgical precision, understanding circuits and components with an intuition that couldn't be taught. Her parents wanted her to become a doctor or engineer, respectable professions that would justify their sacrifices as immigrants. But Riley was drawn to puzzles, to problems that others considered unsolvable. When she scored perfect marks on her engineering aptitude tests, military recruiters started calling. At 18, she joined the Navy and volunteered for explosive ordnance disposal training, one of the most dangerous specialties in the military. The instructors warned her that EOD had one of the highest casualty rates in the armed forces. They told her that bomb disposal wasn't about bravery or adrenaline. It was about methodical precision, infinite patience, and the ability to remain calm when one mistake meant death. Riley excelled beyond everyone's expectations. During her first deployment to Afghanistan, she disarmed over 200 improvised explosive devices, earning a reputation for finding solutions to bombs that had stumped other specialists. Her approach was unconventional. Instead of following standard protocols, she studied each device like a unique puzzle, understanding the psychology of whoever had built it. "Every bomb tells a story," she told her commanding officer, after successfully disarming a particularly complex device that had killed 2 other EOD specialists. "If you can understand the mind that created it, you can predict how to defeat it." After completing her military service with commendations for exceptional performance under fire, Riley was recruited by the FBI's Hazardous Device School. Her instructors quickly realized they weren't just training another bomb technician, they were working with someone who understood explosives at a fundamental level that approached artistry. Director Marcus Kane first heard about Riley Chen 3 months after she joined the Bureau. A domestic terrorist had planted a series of sophisticated devices throughout Washington, D.C., and the FBI's most experienced bomb squad had been unable to disarm them. The bombs were too complex, too unpredictable, designed by someone with advanced knowledge of both electronics and psychology. Riley studied the devices for exactly 47 minutes, then began disarming them one by one with modifications to standard procedures that made her supervisors nervous. But every bomb was successfully neutralized, and the terrorists' plan was completely disrupted. "How did you know those modifications would work?" Kane asked her during the debrief. "Sir, the bomber was showing off," Riley replied, cleaning her tools with characteristic precision. Every device had unnecessary complications, artistic flourishes that made them more complex but not more effective. Once I understood he was trying to prove how clever he was, I could predict his patterns. Kane studied the young technician with growing interest. In 30 years with the Bureau, he had learned to recognize exceptional talent. Riley Chen wasn't just skilled, she was intuitive in ways that couldn't be trained, which brought him to this moment, standing in an abandoned Chicago subway tunnel, watching Riley stare at a device that represented everything she'd trained for and more. 21 seconds. The bomb before them was a masterpiece of malevolent engineering, 3 separate timing systems, each connected to different trigger mechanisms. Cut the wrong wire, and the device would detonate immediately. Allow the timer to reach 0, and the explosion would be even larger, designed to collapse the tunnel and bring down half the financial district above. "Chen, we need to evacuate," Kane's deputy director suggested through the radio. "Get our people out and let the blast containment teams handle it." "Sir, there's no containing this," Riley replied, studying the device with the same focused intensity she'd applied to every bomb she'd ever encountered. "The blast radius will extend at least 6 city blocks. We're looking at casualties in the tens of thousands." Kane moved closer to Riley's position, his eyes fixed on the countdown timer. He had spent decades making difficult decisions, but never one with stakes this high. The device before them wasn't just a bomb. It was a test of everything the FBI claimed to stand for. 18 seconds. "What do you need?" Kane asked quietly. Riley's hands moved over her scattered tools, each one inadequate for the task ahead. "Sir, the metal alloy on the casing is some kind of hardened steel composite. My cutting tools can't penetrate it, and the timer mechanism is encased in the same material. I need something that can cut through military-grade armor." Kane's mind raced through possibilities. Military explosive disposal units had specialized equipment, but there wasn't time to get it to their location. The Chicago Police Bomb Squad had already declared the device beyond their capabilities. Every conventional solution required more time than they had. 15 seconds. That's when Kane remembered something his grandfather had told him 40 years ago during one of their weekend visits to the old man's workshop. Stories about World War II, about improvised solutions in desperate situations, about tools that had been designed when American lives depended on getting things right the first time. Kane reached into his jacket and withdrew something that he'd carried for 30 years but never expected to use. His grandfather's demolition kit from the European theater. The leather case was worn smooth from decades of handling, containing tools that had been designed to disarm Nazi explosive devices in bombed-out cities across France and Germany. "Chen!" Kane called out, throwing the kit across the tunnel. Riley caught it reflexively, her eyes widening as she opened the case. Inside were cutting tools unlike anything in modern bomb disposal kits, hardened steel implements designed to cut through anything the German military could produce. But more than that, there was a small notebook filled with handwritten notes in careful cursive, documenting techniques for dealing with unconventional explosive devices. 12 seconds. Riley's fingers flew through the notebook pages, her mind processing information at superhuman speed. Her grandfather's notes described devices that combined multiple trigger mechanisms designed to defeat conventional disposal techniques. But more importantly, they described psychological patterns, how enemy bomb makers thought, how they tried to anticipate disposal methods. 9 seconds. "The third wire," Riley whispered, understanding flooding through her. "He expects us to cut the obvious wires. The third wire is the real trigger. It's designed to look like a dummy circuit." She selected one of her grandfather's cutting tools, a specialized instrument designed for precision work under extreme pressure. The metal was different from modern tools, harder, more reliable, forged at a time when American victory depended on equipment that never failed. 6 seconds. Riley positioned the tool against the device's casing, exactly where her grandfather's notes indicated the real control circuit would be located. The hardened steel cut through the modern alloy like it was designed specifically for this purpose. 3 seconds. The timer stopped at 0002. For several heartbeats, nothing moved in the tunnel except the settling dust and the sound of Riley's controlled breathing. The device that had threatened 50,000 lives was now just an expensive collection of inert components. "Chen, report." Kane's voice carried a tension he couldn't quite hide. "Device neutralized, sir," Riley replied, carefully securing the deactivated bomb according to protocol. "Threat eliminated." The silence that followed was broken by Kane's deputy director over the radio. "Outstanding work, Specialist Chen. How did you know which circuit to target?" Riley looked at the notebook in her hands, at handwriting that had guided American soldiers through similar situations 70 years earlier. "Sir, I had help from someone who'd seen this kind of device before." Kane approached Riley's position, noting how she handled his grandfather's tools with the same reverence she'd shown her own equipment. "Chen, those tools belong to my grandfather, Staff Sergeant William Kane, 101st Airborne Division. He disarmed Nazi explosives during the liberation of France." Riley nodded, understanding the significance of what had just occurred. "Sir, his notes saved thousands of lives today. These techniques, they're not in any modern manual." "Because some knowledge can only be passed down through experience," Kane replied, accepting the kit as Riley carefully returned it to its case. "My grandfather always said that bomb disposal wasn't about following procedures. It was about understanding the mind of your enemy." 2 hours later, as FBI technicians finished securing the scene, Kane found Riley completing her incident report with characteristic thoroughness. She documented every aspect of the disposal operation, including detailed notes about the unconventional techniques that had made success possible. "Chen, I'm recommending you for the FBI's highest commendation for exceptional performance under fire," Kane told her. "What you did today was extraordinary." Riley looked up from her report, her expression serious. "Sir, with respect, I didn't do this alone. Without your grandfather's tools and knowledge, we'd have lost thousands of people." Kane studied the young specialist, recognizing something in her approach that reminded him of his grandfather's stories. The old man had always insisted that the best soldiers weren't the ones who followed orders blindly. They were the ones who understood that protecting people sometimes meant improvising solutions that couldn't be found in any manual. "Chen, how would you like a permanent assignment to our strategic response unit? We handle the cases that require unconventional solutions." Riley's eyes lit up with the same focused intensity she'd shown while staring at the countdown timer. "Sir, when do I start?" 3 weeks later, Riley Chen was called to another impossible situation, a nuclear device hidden somewhere in New York's subway system, with 6 million lives hanging in the balance. This time, she carried her own kit of specialized tools, supplemented by techniques she'd learned from a World War II veteran who'd understood that some battles could only be won by people willing to risk everything for others. But more importantly, she carried the knowledge that sometimes the most important solutions come not from advanced technology or complex procedures, but from understanding that protecting people is worth any risk. As Riley entered the New York subway tunnel, her radio crackled with familiar voice. "Chen, this is Director Kane. You have everything you need?" Riley checked her equipment one final time, her grandfather's notebook secured in her vest pocket alongside her modern tools. "Sir, I'm ready." Above ground, 6 million people went about their daily routines, completely unaware that their lives depended on a bomb technician who'd learned that sometimes the most important qualification for solving impossible problems isn't advanced training or sophisticated equipment. Sometimes it's just being someone who refuses to let good people die on their watch. In the end, that's what Riley Chen represented. The understanding that protecting others isn't just a job or a duty. It's about being the kind of person who steps forward when everyone else steps back, who finds solutions when others see only problems, and who carries the knowledge that some battles can only be won by people willing to risk everything for people they've never met. When Director Kane threw her his grandfather's toolkit that day in Chicago, he wasn't just giving her better tools. He was passing down a legacy of service that connected World War II veterans to modern FBI specialists, a tradition of understanding that some jobs require people willing to bet their lives on their ability to keep others safe. Riley Chen proved that tradition lives on in every person who chooses to serve, who studies the impossible until it becomes merely difficult, and who understands that the most important victories are often won by people working in the shadows to protect others from dangers they'll never know existed. Because that's what heroes do, not for recognition or reward, but because protecting people is more important than protecting yourself.